Some of you may remember the video that I did a while back called Peel, kind of an amusing video that showed a lot of emojis doing crazy things. Well, we have another removal system that has been around with DMK for, I would say, a good 50 years. But before we start talking about it, and the main reason that people are afraid of it, and it's come to my attention lately, that some people are afraid of it. In fact, we have a paramedical class, and there's been people that were afraid to even go through the paramedical class because they feared this one procedure. But before I name the name of what it is, let's talk about removal. If you take the pH of the skin down, like past 3.8, not all the way to 1, it becomes acid. And so when you acidify a protein or a protease molecular structure, such as skin, you harden it. All the cells harden, and then they kind of fracture and break up and detach from the underlying living epidermis, which is what we want. And we do that many times, with the exception of alpha hydroxy acids, which have not only a low pH factor, but also a hydrophilic factor, but we won't talk about that today. Now let's go up the other end of the scale. We call it playing the piano on the pH scale with DMK. Go all the way up to, say, 12, pH of 12. That becomes very alkaline. And at that point, all of the protease cell structures just become dissolved, soften and dissolve, and then detach from the skin. And very, very quickly. In fact, so quickly that if you don't do it properly, and you don't do it with the right timing in mind, you're going to end up with, I hate to use the B word, but you could end up with burns. How did the gangsters in the 1930s get rid of bodies back in the old days? They'd take them outside of town, they'd dig a big trench, they'd throw the bodies in, and they'd throw a couple of bags of quicklime, and the bodies would dissolve because of the pH was so high that it just dissolved. Now that's kind of a grim comparison to what we're doing, but just to give you an idea, the power of pH. As a matter of fact, acid can help preserve. When a pathologist is working in a lab and he wants to preserve some specimens, he'll put it in formaldehyde type solution, which acidifies and holds it intact. All right. So we have to imagine this pH playing piano when we're working on people's skin. Which kind to use, when to use it, and why. Now, some people are afraid of our famous alkaline wash, and we've been using it for, I would say almost 50 years. The formula itself is extremely technical. It's not as easy as people think. They think, that's kind of like a depilatory. Yeah, it is in one way, and we do use it as a depilatory. It's a very good depilatory, very expensive. As a matter of fact, I remember years ago in Saudi Arabia, when we had quite a few clinics in the kingdom, the very wealthy princesses and Arab women and some of the wealthier Indian women would prefer bikini line hair removal with alkaline wash, as opposed to the rip of waxing or the tedious long time of electrolysis. And because they had two things happen. The hair was quickly dissolved, but also a layer of old dead skin. And if it was done properly, the skin would be very smooth and nice and feel very fresh and natural. And we can still do that to this day. Ideal for a young man that's suffering from acne. If he has what we call backne, acne on the back, and there's a lot of hair that he doesn't like, we can kill two birds with one stone. On the flip side of that, there are some young men that have pimples on the chest, and they also like their chest hair. So I'm sorry, dude, you're just going to have to do without the chest hair until we get the acne under control. But it will grow back. It won't grow back quite as thick. Now, does that mean it's permanent hair loss as a depilatory? No. All I do know is that for some strange reason, the hair does grow back somewhat less. And in very rare occasions, doesn't come back at all. I remember in Chicago years ago, there was a gal from Evanston, Illinois. She came into my clinic, and she had a very thick line of hair from belly button down to the pubis. And she says, "This is the only hairy part I've got. I got to get rid of this, and I hate waxing." And this was in the old days, early days. So I did an alkaline wash on her, neutralized it, finished off with the body enzyme, and she left. And I didn't see her for a long time. And finally I ran into her at a party, and I said, I think her name was Sheila or Shirley, something like that. And I said, "Hi, how are you? How come you stop coming in? You just had the one treatment. It takes several." And she goes, "Oh, it never came back." I go, "What?" It never grew back. And I was, "Oh my God." I said, "But don't tell anybody, because everybody will expect that phenomenon." But it just never did. These are the odd things that have happened through all these years in my career. So what do we use alkaline wash for? Well, let's say you have a client coming in, and let's flip from the male to the female, with acne vulgaris. And you'll notice, if you look closely at most females that have acne vulgaris, that they have a lot of vellus hair. Sometimes it's so light you can't see it with the naked eye, but it's there. And you can test that by just taking Urban Mineral Mist or a spray, lightly spray, and you'll see the droplets bead on the hair. That's just part of the whole acne situation because of the androgen and testosterone factors that's inherent even in females that have acne. In fact, that's part of the acne disorder. But I would do an alkaline wash on this person straight away if I were accomplished, if I was certified to do it, and if I had the DMK MD certification. Simply because not only would it dissolve all of the vellus hair and whatever's impacting the aperture of the hair follicle, but it also takes some cuticle off of the pustules and sometimes even the cysts. And I've seen many cases where blood and pus will just pour out without having to get in there with your hands and Kleenex or whatever, or Comedone extractor, and force it out. I don't like extractions. I never have. And yes, everybody that's listening to this, if you're a professional esthetician or even a dermatologist or whatever, you have done extractions. My mother did them on me all the time when I was a kid, and it drove me crazy. I'd start to walk out the door and she'd, "Come here, Danné," and I just went nuts. But literally what's happening when you force old hardened pre-deposited fats out of the pore is you're creating a small scar each and every time. So we try to let the chemistry do the work. In this case, alkaline wash is excellent. We have other cleansing products that do the same thing, but not squeeze each time. Now, you're going to do what you want. I know that. I'm just telling you what I have found and what I would do if I were in private practice again. Another thing we use alkaline wash for, and I started this in my research with black skin years and years ago in Chicago, is the razor bump syndrome. Here is the epidermis, right? And here is the sebaceous gland. Okay, this gives us our highly antibiotic natural sebum or oil, which is one half of our acid mantle, by the way. We'll talk about that later. And then over here we have the sudoriferous gland that gives us water to the skin or sweat. Okay, and both of these glands flow out on the skin. Every 2 or 3 hours they come up and they occlude over the entire epidermis, giving us our natural acid mantle, which is nature's real moisturizer. Creams do not moisturize. Creams are good delivery systems. They can actually hold water in once it's there, but they do not by themselves moisturize. Only this does. And we accomplish that with 2 products. But anyway, in the case of the black male razor bump syndrome, cuticle buildup starts happening, and mostly on the neck, sometimes on the face too, and it builds up more and more and more and more and more. Now, the difference between Caucasian cuticle buildup and black cuticle buildup is that black people have much more of a proliferation of new cells all the time, more than white people. That's why black skin, I think, stays younger longer. It also may explain a little bit more about keloids because of the rapid cell proliferation at any site of injury would cause an overblow of proliferation, therefore forming a keloid scar. But anyway, back to this. So this cuticle builds up, and now the sebum is blocked up behind it and it starts to reservoir more and more and more. Now eventually it'll find its way out, but it will come up first in the form of like a cystic bump, and the hair will be coiled inside. You can actually see that sometimes. And these poor guys go crazy because they try to shave normally. One thing I've taught a lot of my black friends back in the day in Chicago was to shave after you get out of the shower, not before, because you want the cells of the skin and whatever hair is to be puffed up with water so it's easily accessible by the razor, not dry. But anyway, they're afraid to shave because they can shave that bump right off and there's blood all over the place, and then that's followed by hyperpigmentation, because hyperpigmentation is the defense mechanism of the skin, and its job is to turn dark when there's any kind of injury, whether it be sun damage, whether it be attack, as in this case with a razor, or smack in the face or a burn. Those melanin cells go to the surface as part of our natural defense, and they will do that by nature. So my first approach to this phenomenon was to get rid of the cuticle layer, and this would allow the client, the patient, the man who had this problem, to be able to shave nicely like anybody else. Okay, now there's various ways to do this. So we can do it enzymatically, but a lot of times I would use, if it was a really bad case, and I've seen some really terrible cases, I would use the alkaline wash. Okay, now the fear of alkaline wash is because it's so quick. Timing is everything. You know, you can talk about this new peel, you can talk about dermablading, you can talk about microdermablation, you know, scrape and suck. I was actually the idiot that brought that machine into this country many years ago by doing a friend who manufactured the very first microdermabraders, called the Pepita, Mattioli Engineering in Italy. Let him into an exhibition booth that we had rented about 4 in Vegas and let him show his machine. And he sold, I think he sold 27 machines off of my stand in 3 days. And I go, whoa. You know, and it became a hit, and everybody knows about microdermabrasion. But with alkaline wash, you can remove more dead cell, redundant material, than you can with a week's worth of microdermabrating. All right? So, you know, don't tell me about this peel, that peel, dermablading, microderm, whatever, when we can let chemistry like that work for us so quickly, so very, very quickly. We use it in scar revision. It's excellent because it is fast and it's controllable. You know, we use it in so many different ways, even hyperpigmentation. We have a method where most of the old melanin is caught up in the redundant cuticle. Okay, we know that. So if we can get an alkaline wash on that area, let's say it's a big fat round melasma, we alkaline quickly, not a lot of time, maybe half a minute, get it off, and then we freeze that area, that specific area, that pigmented area, we freeze it with a block of ice. We're coming up with some other methods of freezing that's a little more professional looking than ice, but you can use ice now. This creates what we call an osmotic sink. So when we drop our melanin inhibitors, all of our pigmentation products into that melasma, it stays in that area and does not bleed into the periphery of the skin where there is no pigmentation problem. In other words, we can zero and focus. Okay? So we have that as well with alkaline wash. The fear of alkaline wash comes from people that do not know how to use it discriminately, and they see what could happen if they screw up. Well, I'll tell you one thing. Back in the early days when I first developed it, did I screw up? Yes, I did. I had one guy, this was again in Chicago, a businessman came in and he had huge patches of psoriasis on his forehead. Now don't go saying that alkaline wash is a big cure for psoriasis. It's not. This was a circumstance that I did. So I thought, okay, well, let's do alkaline wash on this. So all those plaques, those awful looking plaques up and along his hairline that create a product of psoriasis came off. Boom. And then I did a full face enzyme treatment on him and he was thrilled and he went home. 2 days later he comes in and he goes, is this okay? And he had these bright red, huge marks all across his forehead. And I was alarmed because it wasn't broken. The skin wasn't broken. You have to watch for that. That's why I urge all DMK practitioners to have some polysporin on hand, just little packets just to give the client to take home, just in case the skin opens a little bit. It's not a big deal. It'll heal. And of course, beta gel, boom, heals faster. But just in case, because everyone reacts a little bit differently. But anyway, so I looked at it, and since it wasn't broken through the skin, there was no scab, no field of blood, I thought, what's creating this is there's still too much alkaline in that spot. So I went back to the refrigerator, and I happened to have some buttermilk there. That was back in the time when drinking buttermilk was supposed to be great for the stomach and all that kind of thing. So I dotted it with buttermilk, and immediately all that redness started to go away. And I told him to go home and do that. And it came out fine. And this was years and years ago before I had all the, I didn't have Betagen cream, I didn't have Beta Gel at that time, I didn't have Contraderm, I just had logic in my head. And so obviously, if you want to correct something that's that alkaline, you put an acid on it, okay? Not Arm & Hammer baking soda. Somebody thought I meant Arm & Hammer baking soda. That's like carrying coals to Newcastle and cause it to burn even more because that's alkaline, all right? You have to think of the chemistry and everything. The whole secret of alkaline wash is, number one, timing. And the way that I do it, now I know that a lot of you people have gone to different classes, wonderful educators out there. We've got loads of them in every country, and they might all have little different ways of doing it. The way I do it, and I used to do people that had, we had one kid come into my Chicago clinic, and beautiful blonde kid, beautiful skin, but he had hirsutism, which is thick black hair everywhere. And his boyfriend didn't like it. And he says, I want to keep my chest and all that, but I want my back and sides removed. So I actually spread a sheet out, and I did his whole lower body and back and that in sections using a surgical tongue depressor. I mixed my alkaline wash. I would apply it with the tongue depressor, gloves on, of course. You want to burn the hell out of your hands to bring the pH in your hands up. And I would literally scrape him like a hog. That's what I thought of each time I did. I scraped him. And then, of course, I loaded ectodermal peel all over the place to neutralize it, and then we usually finished up later with the body enzyme, and he came back all the time. And everyone has a different regrowth of hair, by the way. The anagen phase is different from person to person, so you can never tell when they come back, for that. And his case was only hair, but acne and scar revision were probably the most frequent patients that would come in with those conditions. If you're working on the back and the body, dusting it with Actrol powder helps to shrink the medulla so the hair doesn't pop up quite so fast. That works too. But I use the tongue depressor simply because I like to place it on the skin, time it, move it aside, look. What am I looking for? I'm looking for erythema. Little erythema is okay, not necessarily horrible. If it's just a light erythema, a little redness, move it back. Wait another minute, move it. Now if I see blanching, whiteness, then I know it's time to get rid of it. Get it off quickly, neutralize it quickly, and carry on with the rest of the DMK treatment that you're performing. That's how the alkaline wash is used as a tool, another tool in your kit. I don't like it being presented as a major treatment. A lot of people make a mistake. I had a doctor, dermatolog, because in Russia and in Ukraine, DMK is usually done by dermatologists, dermatologs, not that many therapists, and some surgeons. And she was a gal from Georgia, that country within Russia. And she came down to a big seminar that I did for doctors in Azerbaijan, in Baku, which is like the Beverly Hills of that area of the world. Baku's an incredibly wealthy town. Oil wells all over the place on the way into town, pumping. But anyway, she came up to me to show me all her pictures of horrible acne, scar revision, everything. Each one she says, alkaline wash, alkaline wash, alkaline wash. And I had to correct her. I says, don't market it like that. You're focusing on one tool, and that leads the client to believe that that's what they always should have. No. It is part of a treatment and not for the entire series of treatments. It's a tool in the kit. Don't be afraid of it. You have to learn exactly how to do it, and a lot of this is in your practical. If you are thinking about becoming a DMK, a certified DMK MD practitioner, sign up, because there's nothing to be afraid of whatsoever. You just have to use your eyes, your timing, and each step as it's taught from the educator and in the manual, and you'll be successful. If there's a little bit of irritation every once in a while, it's not a big deal. People have what they call reactive skin, and sometimes skin is almost like it has its own sensory memory bank. You can put something on it that it's not familiar with, and it'll react. And then the next time you put that same thing on, nothing bad happens at all. I've had that happen many times with alkaline wash. So if they have a little reaction in the beginning, stop the treatment, and you can do the test patch as described in the manual and by your educator. Yes, if someone's coming in and they're allergic to a lot of things, or they have a history of reaction, by all means do a patch test so you know where you're at. But even after that, if there's an immediate reaction, don't give up. Try it again. The problem with a lot of therapists is they get too scared. And in the old days, they would just stop treatment and say, go to a dermatologist. And of course, the dermatologists say, this person's allergic to all those products and everything. No, you can't go. Don't go back there. And here, take this antibiotic and this antihistamine and this and this and this. And the client is not helped at all. And we don't do that anymore. I don't think there's one anomaly that I've seen, and I mean this sincerely, that we cannot deal with. And we've dealt with some pretty scary conditions. So be confident that if you take the training, keep your eyes sharp, know about your timing, and know about the skin condition, you will be perfectly able to carry off an alkaline wash treatment as part of your DMK protocol. Thank you. And this book, Maybelline Prince, I describe the background of all of these things that I'm talking about when I do these different videos. But I've never pushed the book. I thought, the publisher is supposed to do that, and it's on Amazon, and it's also on Audible. I found out a lot of people do Audible nowadays. I was kind of shocked. I'm glad I didn't have to be the reader. I wanted to in the beginning, but one day I started reading the book, and I thought, no, there's no way I'm going to be able to get through this. So I had to audition several readers. But the book contains every single thing that's the history behind all of these treatments. My journey from way back and all the incredible things that happened in between, and it's like something out of a science fiction movie. Even now, pushing 80 in March, I think, did I really do all that? Oh my God, did I really do all that? And I'm sincere when I say that. I couldn't do it now. I just couldn't. The whole Russia situation, Ukraine situation, Germany, all the countries, Indonesia, with the voodoo prince, and just all of these things that happened while working. So the DMK concept isn't just about products and steps and protocols on skin. It's about history, family, tradition, sex, rock and roll, everything you can think of. And that's why they made a movie, and the movie will be released sometime early this year. The production company hasn't decided whether to do the festivals or to just sell it outright to Netflix. It's being talked about both ways. But they found Grayson Chance, the pop star, he's 25 years old, to play me back in the 70s. And they made a movie. But it doesn't say The Maybelline Prince, it's just Maybelline Prince. The Maybelline Prince is available on Amazon. And then I've written a professional type of book geared toward the layperson, describing every type of surgery, injection, ingredient, supplement, miracle, age management, cure, everything that's ever been thought about and talked about and sold around the world. Is it real? Is it fake? And what is it all about? And that's called Skin Health by Danné Montague King. That's on Amazon too.